Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest this evening is Professor Wang Jianwei, an expert in U.S.-China relations. The professor joins us as the United States presidential election continues to be contested, bringing into question exactly what the nation's relationship with China is going to look like in the future. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a very interesting couple of days that never seem to end. It just kind of drags on into the next one. And I wanted to ask, it's a very broad question, but what has your impression been of these U.S. presidential elections so far?
Well, I think that two things will come to my mind. One is I think I can use three C's to describe the election. Kind of chaotic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Controversial, and also sometimes confusing. Yeah, looks like not like presidential elections in the past. You have a winner, basically on the election day, right, in the evening, and both sides will recognize, and that's it, right? Yeah. But this time is very different. Although Biden declared his victory, Donald Trump still refused to concede. So he promised to have legal challenges to the result. I think it's very unusual in the history of U.S. presidential election. So this is the first point I want to make. The second one is that I think that either Trump or Biden, then I think there is also a consensus among the American politicians as well as other people. This is probably one of the most important elections in history of the United States.
And we saw that with the voter turnout. I mean, we had record numbers that we've never seen before on both sides.
Yeah, so it's probably the voter turnout could be the highest in recent decades, I think. So I think that both Biden and Trump, they agree. If they disagree on everything else, but they agree on one thing, is that this is the most important, most consequential election for the United States. I think not just for the United States, but also probably for the world. Who is going to be the president of the United States probably will affect the U.S. relations with major countries in the world, and probably I don't know, maybe probably also will be related to the world order and war and peace in international relations. So so that's why I think that not just Americans watching the election very carefully, but millions of Chinese are very much interested in this election. They talk about that. I talk to my friends, and ordinary Chinese. They are also concerned about the result of this election.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I don't think we've ever had an election that's been so observed internationally. You see some of the news coverage which is coming out of everywhere, and people were watching it, biting their nails, trying to support either side. And some interesting support for candidates that you would think wouldn't normally be leaning that way. Not necessarily Republican or Democratic, but just because of the values. Do you think that there's going to be any sort of result soon?
Well, it looks like, in my opinion, I think that probably it will, at least drag into the December before the Electoral College cast its vote. And unless all the legal challenges, the lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign will be dismissed, by the court very soon. Otherwise, probably I think the legal process probably will go on for a while. That will impose a kind of difficulties for the foreign countries.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen Biden already has been trying to contact some of the other leaders of nations and trying to set up a transition so that when his team does come in, assuming that nothing else unexpected occurs and Biden doesn't actually win, even though that looks very unlikely.
Unlikely, yeah.
But it seems like there are a lot of hurdles that Biden and his team are having to face because they don't have access to the funding that they need to in order to have the transition. And I was just reading today about how they don't have access even to some of the messages that the world leaders are sending them through the State Department.
This is very, very unusual. Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Secretary of State, Pompeo, looks like he's such a stunned, strenuous, supporter of the Donald Trump. He even said, well, we are going to have a smooth transition to the second term of the Trump administration. It's unbelievable, for him, Secretary of State. I think that politically you're supposed to be neutral. You are not going to take that kind of action, position, but that it is the case. So, yeah, I think that it's a very unfortunate because the Chinese leaders have not congratulated the President-elect Biden formally, simply because current President Trump refused to recognize the defeat.
Well, and there was a lot of name calling that went on during the run-up to the election, specifically directed at China and at Russia, talking about election interference. And I have, Global Times and Xinhua were putting up opinion pieces talking about how China wasn't really wanting to formally announce or formally congratulate the winner, in part because of those accusations of interference. Do you think that that's accurate?
Well, actually, China's reaction actually falls into the traditional, way of reacting to the U.S. presidential election. China tend to be cautious.
Yeah.
And I remember the 2000 election. There was also controversial.
Yep.
Right.
Went up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, went up to the Supreme Court. I think that China also withhold its recognition, congratulation until very late. I think it's December, the middle of December. So it's not nothing unusual. But so it's kind of interesting to observe that most of the U.S. close allies, they rush to congratulate the Biden, including Israel Prime Minister.
Yeah, that was
Netanyahu.
interesting. That was interesting.
Right? So looks like Trump takes Netanyahu as probably one of the closest allies. But he rushed to say congratulations to Joe Biden, then of course making Trump very unhappy. Right? So, yeah. But
he hasn't been out in public almost at all. We saw him for Veterans Day, and that was the first time that Trump had come out.
Yeah.
And he still didn't make any formal statements.
On the other hand, those countries are supposed to be, from the American perspective, supposed to be adversaries of the United States. China, Russia, and North Korea. They haven't called the winner of the election.
Even though Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump are such close friends.
That's right. So that's right. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know what Trump will think in his mind. Probably will think, these supposed to be adversaries probably are more cautious about the result of this election. Yeah.
It's an interesting world. Well, this is playing out over a world stage, and I think that because of tradition, the concession speech happening so soon after the election results, the world is kind of expecting that the United States would turn one way or another. Do you think that the way that this election is playing out is influencing either positively or negatively the worldwide impression of the United States and the U.S. democratic system?
I think so. Then America is supposed to be one of the most mature and successful democracy in the world. You can talk about other countries. They have a crisis in the election process, but this election makes people wonder whether this political system has serious problems need to be fixed. And among other things, I think this electoral college system, people have talked about the possibility of, changing it for a long time, but nothing has happened. But I would think that if the U.S. president is elected by the popular vote, you're not going to have that kind of problem, right? You can know the result on the same day. But this electoral college system, first of all, I don't think it's it's a direct election of the U.S. president. I just it just come to my mind that U.S. government tend to criticize the way of Hong Kong and Macau to elect their chief executive. They think it was not very democratic, right? You have what's called the election commission, right? But the same thing in the U.S.
Yeah, it's not complete universal suffrage.
That's
if
right.
you're not choosing one person, one vote.
But the thing is that in the past, no matter how imperfect of the electoral college, but people tend to accept the result.
Yeah.
But this time,
Hillary Clinton, for example, in the last election.
That's right. Clinton, of course, she was very upset, but she recognized that accepted the result without a problem. But this time, you see, Donald Trump and his supporters, they refuse to accept.
And there's a lot of supporters. I mean, 70 million people is nothing to sneeze at.
Half. The country is very much split. That's a very serious concern, not just for Americans, but also for the outsiders. But people even talk about possibility there could be another civil war in the U.S. Oh, gee, I mean, this is unbelievable. You can talk about any other countries, the possibility of civil war, but not the U.S.
Yeah.
But now you see a kind of even, no matter how remote it is, but it's a possibility for, the polarized society. They could lead to
armed
conflict.
Yeah. And armed. Look at the amount of weapons which we've seen just in the footage of people at protests, both for Trump and for Biden.
Then before the election, I mean, those white supremacists, they tried to launch a kind of a coup d'état against the state government. This is unbelievable for our understanding about what the system is.
Well, this is 2020.
I suppose. Yeah,
That's the interesting thing, though. All of this is playing out over the course of an unprecedented global pandemic, and we've seen, the U.S. we're having new spikes, new records in terms of infections and also death rates, and over 240,000 people have died in the country over the course of this, and that we can't point fingers, but there was only one person who was a president during that happening.
Sure. Well, if he takes the credit or the blame, I think it's fair. You're the president.
Well, I find that very interesting because he did say he took the blame, but then within pretty much the same sentence he said that it was China's fault.
Yeah, China's fault.
That's a big keyword in how he has been leading in his presidency. He's been pointing a lot of fingers at China. But then there has been a bipartisan kind of feel. We've had the Democrats voting also overwhelmingly for some of these sanctions, including on Hong Kong and over Xinjiang. Do you think that under a Biden administration that type of tone is going to change?
Well, a lot of people say that there is a consensus among the American elites, both Republican and Democrat, that the United States should be tough on China and should take a very different approach towards China. Well, I think that to some extent I think it's true because both Democratic and Republican elites, they agree that the past policy toward China failed to change China according to the American image.
Yeah. That's something Americans do a lot also. This is the image of what we want, and then we'll change it to make it that way.
That's right. That's right. Then also looks like the China policy of the past 7 or 6 or 7 U.S. administration, failed to prevent. I think in a way failed to prevent the rise of China as another superpower on a par with the United States. A lot of Americans, they are upset about that.
Yeah.
They want to. That's why Trump's China policy actually was kind of supported by many American elites as well as the American public, because they worry about the possibility that China will, take over the United States in many areas, including the high technology. That's why the Trump administration, was cracked down the Chinese companies like Huawei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huawei, CTE. Yeah.
Yeah, CTE. Yeah. So I think that probably that overall broad strategic framework or picture probably will not change. Even Biden becomes the president of the United States. But on the other hand, I think that the Trump administration has done a lot of damage to U.S.-China relations, almost to the point of no repair.
Yeah.
I think that. So I'm glad that he will be leaving White House pretty soon, because if he stays in the White House for another 4 years, I think that U.S.-China relation probably will collapse.
Which is inconceivable based upon such interdependence. We're buying things from China, they're buying things from the United States, there is the technological advancement, but I don't think the world has actually really come to terms with what a world would look like in which there are no China-U.S. relations.
That's why we say, what the Trump administration has done is against the historical trend. They try to decouple, right, with China. In a time that you have such a high, degree of interdependence between, the two countries, and a high degree of globalization. So, I think that I have some hope for the Biden administration. I think that if you look at his view about China for the last several decades, I don't see much hostility toward China. I think that Biden, used to be very friendly toward China. He has visited China many times. He has good relations with Chinese leaders, and also several times I think that he said, well, the rise of China is not a threat to the United States. Of course, recent years he also has been influenced by the big atmosphere in the United States to be tough on China. China is a threat. And everything went wrong was the fault of China. That kind of thing, mentality. But I don't think that I don't think he will take the similar approach as Donald Trump has taken in his presidency. Also depends on what kind of people he is going to use.
Oh, definitely.
For his his administration.
Yeah.
I think that the problem with the Trump administration is not just President Trump himself, but also those guys who are working for him, like Secretary of State Pompeo, Navarro, and Bolton. Those are the very right wing, almost like extreme kind of conservatives.
Well, and it seems like there were so many transitions of those officials within the White House. It's kind of like a slot machine until you just keep ringing until you get the one that you want.
At the beginning, I think it was okay. The Secretary of State and the National Secretary of State Tillerson and National Security Advisor McMaster and also Secretary of Defense Mattis. They are realists. They are tough. They are conservative, but they are not crazy.
Yeah.
But the personnel changes went from bad to worse. So I don't see no matter what kind of the advisors, high-level advisors, the Biden is going to use for his administration. I don't see too many that kind of personnel in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Probably that's good news. Well, I'm sure that some of the Democrats, they also want to be tougher in China.
Oh, definitely. We can see Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, in the Congress. But
but not as
but they are not going to serve in the the Biden administration. But I think it's very important who are going to be the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and then also U.S. Ambassador to UN.
Yeah.
All those who are going to be the trade representative.
Yeah.
They are very, very important. So I think that under the Biden administration, we're still going to see a lot of competitions between the two countries, United States and China. But at the same time, Biden is also for cooperation with China.
But he did say that he was willing to work with other countries to, quote unquote, isolate China.
Well, he said, well, you should not take a unilateral approach towards China. You have to try to form a kind of so-called a united front to deal with China, right? On trade, on high-tech issues and other issues.
Well, and the military also.
Yeah. I think that on South China Sea issue maybe. But that's fine. But if you really want to work with your allies, Trump's kind of extreme China policy is not going to work.
Well, it didn't seem like Trump was managing to keep many of the allies either.
That's right. So, what I'm saying is that if you really want to consult with the allies on China policy, well, just look at the European countries. They don't go for that kind of hostile, confrontational policy toward China, right? So that also, on the one hand, of course, you can put more pressure upon China if you work with other allies. On the other hand, I think it will lower bar. It will lower the demand on China because these countries, they have different interests. Right? They're not going to. If Biden takes a very extreme policy, I don't think that they are going to go with with the U.S.
Not everybody has as many soybeans that they have to
That's
sell.
Right. That's right. So I think that it's both good and bad. You have both good and bad aspects if you want to work with allies. So I'm hopeful that at least the U.S.-China relations under Biden probably will be more cooperative and also go back to normal.
I don't know if there is any normal. I mean, everyone keeps talking about the new normal because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Focusing a little bit closer to home, I mean, we are in China, we're an SAR of China, but then it seems like Hong Kong has been used as a type of bargaining chip within everything that's been going on over the past couple of years, amongst the trade war and then what's happened with the protests and then the subsequent Hong Kong Democracy Act and things like that. Do you think that there's going to be major changes in the U.S. stance towards Hong Kong?
Well, this is one issue. I think that probably you're not going to see much difference between Trump and Biden. Biden already criticized and Trump to be too soft on China regarding those so-called the human rights issue. So I think that Biden will be equally tough on Hong Kong issue, and but the reality in Hong Kong has changed quite a bit already with the passage of this national security law.
And the implementation of it, the way that they're choosing
the national security law. I think that, but I don't think that the Biden, administration will, take the Hong Kong issue as a breaking point for the relationship. There are, as former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton once said. She said, human rights issue for the United States, of course, is very important. But there are other equally important issues in the U.S.-China relations. he is well known for.
AKA money talks.
That's right. she's well known for her tough stand on human rights issue. But she realized that this is such an important relationship. You cannot just focus on one issue without handling other important issues. So I think that China, United States will clash on Hong Kong issue. But at the same time, I think that probably under the Biden administration, both sides can have more dialogue. And because right now, all those dialogue mechanisms, they are suspended.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No dialogue, no high-level contact between the two countries. This is extremely unusual.
Yeah, it's unprecedented also.
Yeah,
I mean,
unprecedented. But I think that at least both sides can sit down and talk about those issues. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and the sooner that we can actually have some sort of official confirmation, if we have to wait until the Electoral College votes, then we wait until then. But the sooner that we can get down to that official confirmation and know most likely President-elect Biden is going to be the next president, then they can work towards having that solution. Macau is a little bit of a small fry in all of this, but we do have an interesting kind of caveat because we have these casino concessions and we have the American casino companies which are here, and we have Wynn, which was formerly run by Steve Wynn, who's a very strong Republican donor, and you've got Sheldon Adelson, who's a very strong, specifically Trump donor. It doesn't seem like there's going to be that much of an impact on Macau, but can you foresee any area in which this change of presidency would impact Macau?
Well, I think that the United States has a heavy investment in Macau. Those American gambling business. I think that in a way, I think that the overall U.S.-China relations will also impact upon Macau. And in terms of the Macau-U.S. trade, Macau, in a way, also has been affected by the trade war between the two countries. So if trade war can end, and I think that it's beneficial for Macau to have more exports to U.S. and also more imports from the U.S. Trade will be more likely to grow. But on the other hand, as you just mentioned, that the license for the gambling license is going to be renewed very soon, right? So, when U.S.-China relations deteriorate, people talk about the possibility that, the Chinese side might deny the continuation of the renewal of the license to American companies. That, of course, will be bad for both American companies, also for Macau. On the other hand, if overall U.S.-China relations improve, I don't think that unlikely that kind of situation will take place. Then, so even though Macau is a very small enclave, but I still think that it could be affected by the overall state well-being of the U.S.-China relations.
Yeah, it's completely possible. Going back to the United States, I mean, we talk about this major split that we've seen between people, and we've seen that there are people with guns on both sides, and there are people with very, very different ideas on both sides. Part of that fire was kind of stoked during the Trump administration. Do you picture that Biden is going to have a more difficult time handling internal problems than external problems, and how do you think he's going to divide his time?
Well, I already heard, the advisors for Biden campaign repeatedly said that after Biden takes over, the first priority is domestic issues. It's domestic affairs, among other things. The top priority is coronavirus situation. He has to, because he talked a lot about this, epidemic during the campaign, and he has to gain some credit, by taking effective measure to put things under control. So that will be his first priority. So then also it looks like you are still going to have a split Congress.
Yeah.
The senator probably will still be in the Republican hands.
50.
Yeah. So then if that's the case, they will of course create problems, difficulties for the Biden administration. So I think that given what's going on in the United States, as you mentioned that the social unrest, conflict, pandemic. I think that at least for the first several months, I think that the Biden administration probably has to focus on domestic affairs rather than foreign policy issues. I don't think that he will try to, I think many of his supporters try to overdone some of the mistakes Trump administration has made, right, in international affairs, like withdrawing from the international organizations,
the Paris Accord.
That's right, Paris Accord, and also withdraw from the WTO, WHO, and all that kind of thing. But I suspect that the Biden administration probably will not undo that kind of Trump legacy anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Well, I think the Paris Accord, they've already said that they plan to rejoin as soon as they've come.
And also the Iran nuclear deal and that kind of things. But it takes time. I think it's the right approach. You have to take care of the put your own house in order before you can be in a better position to deal with other countries in the world.
Definitely, and especially just in terms of a leadership point of view. Biden is going to have to show strength and he's going to have to prove to the American population that he deserves to be president.
And then also the country, as I just mentioned, that the country is so split. But he portray himself as a uniter, right, rather than a splitter. So you have to do something to. Those Trump supporters are still very much angry and upset. You have to do something to make them happy. I think that's extremely difficult. So, some people argue that even though Biden has won the election, he's facing daunting tasks ahead of his presidency.
And we'll hope that whoever is in power, wherever in the world, they can control what's happening with this pandemic, because that has been this entire year.
Yeah, by the way, I think on that issue, probably US and China can start cooperation. Because it looks like Trump administration just refused to cooperate with China on the
and with the WHO also. I mean,
That's right.
Everyone's separately developing their own vaccine and saying, no, we're going to buy it all for ourselves.
Yeah. So, I think probably China and the United States can start with the possible cooperation on the pandemic issue. And that will, probably be the good beginning to revitalize U.S.-China relations.
Build some trust, and then we'll go from there.
That's right.
Unfortunately, we've drawn to the end of our time here today. It's a very in-depth topic, and one which we're going to continue to be following probably for the next month or maybe even beyond that. Thank you again for being on the show and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for this week. Join us again next week for more TDM Talk Show. Good night.